Hi, Kim from thatsweetraw.com here. Thank you for tuning in. This video is going to be about breath support for singing. And I'm just going to preface this by saying there are a couple of schools of thought on this, and I am a contemporary singing teacher, not a classical one. So the way that we use our breath and our support for classical singing is different than contemporary singing. So if you are a classical singer, it may pay to go and check out another video, but if you sing pop, rock, folk, musical theatre, you can stay put. So breath support, what is it? It's one of the most confusing things that teachers talk about. It can be really vague and we don't really understand what is going on and how it's supposed to feel in our body. So breath support is about the relationship between your airflow and your vocal cords. And we're trying to make it easier for your vocal cords to do their job and do their job efficiently. And the way that we do that is we want to create air pressure in your lungs, or what we call subglottic pressure. We require more of this pressure for higher notes and for stronger, more powerful notes. And so our body responds to that. You're going to notice when we start to move through this that there's no set way of having breath support that works for every single type of singing or every tone color or every intensity. We have to keep it flexible, and we have to understand this relationship between the parts of our anatomy that work with our breath, so our ribs and our belly and our vocal cords, and how that kind of comes out in the way that we sing. So how does this look in practice? If you know all about the inhale, we're going to kind of speed through this. If you don't, if you haven't seen my video on the inhale, it might pay to check that out. I'm going to link that here for you in some way, just so that you get a handle on that and why we breathe in this way. So that's what that video is all about. But if you've seen it, if you know what you're doing, let's keep going. So the inhale, the rib cage expands and the belly expands a little bit. As we sing, we want to have some kind of control over the airflow, but we don't want to hold back the airflow. So these are the two mistakes that people can make, is giving too much uncontrolled air, which is kind of like throwing a tornado at these tiny little vocal cords, or robbing them of the air. So starving them of air and then them having to work really hard, kind of coming together without that air pressure. So we want to control it in some way, but also make sure that you're giving it airflow. So the control comes from your rib cage. Once you inhale, and we're going to inhale to about 40 to 50% for a lot of contemporary singing, we don't want to overfill. You're going to feel the ribs expand, and I want you to keep them at that sort of soft barrel shape. So we're actually keeping that feeling of the inhale as we sing, rather than collapsing that completely. Where we do let or allow this release to happen is actually at the belly. And the belly expands because the diaphragm flattens on top of our digestive organs. That's why we feel an expansion there. And so as the diaphragm moves back up to its resting position, you're using your air or you're exhaling air, the belly is going to respond to that. So when you inhale, you're going to feel expansion here and here. And then as we exhale, you're going to try to keep your rib cage out. So it's this soft barrel shape, or this buoyant feeling, as you allow the belly to release in response to you releasing your air. So let's give that a go. I'm going to get you to inhale. Once you feel both of those areas expand, we're going to slowly exhale. And I want you to notice what happens at the belly and what happens at the ribs. So these guys are not really meant to move until eventually they're going to have to come in as you really start running out of air. But at first, this is the bit that is moving. All right, so inhale. So the belly moves first, and as I run out of air, then the rib cage comes in. I'm just going to turn to the side. What's the best way to do this? There we go. I know that some people feel a real locking in the belly. So if you don't feel that expansion on the inhale, if you don't feel that it's coming in nice and smoothly on that slow exhale, just practice that for a little bit before you go into vocalizing or into singing. So the belly moves in. We allow that part to move in because it's connected to the bottom part of the lungs, so a smaller part of the lungs than the rib cage is connected to. So we're actually releasing less air, even though when we start getting more and more intensely, we can feel an actual, like, quite an active swing at the belly. It's still less air than us completely collapsing at the rib cage. So I just want you to experience that. If we let everything collapse on that exhale, how much airflow that releases versus keeping that rib cage a little more buoyant there. It feels so much more focused and more consistent, and we have that element of control. I don't like this feeling of control like this, but we do feel like something is supporting us. So let's do this with some singing now. So I'm going to sing the very beginning of Shallow. Tell me something, boy. Aren't you tired trying to fill that void? What if I don't have this idea of breath support happening? What if I just let everything collapse? So my inhale is working, but I'm not doing anything to control that exhale. Or you might go back to not allowing the belly to move, whatever your default is, because I always want you to experiment with the old way that you did things and the way that I'm teaching you. And if it doesn't feel better, don't do it. But I'm hoping that it feels way better and you can hear that there's more fullness in your sound. Okay, so I'm going to let everything collapse this time. Tell me something, boy. Are you tired trying to fill that void? So I can feel that there's this real gust of air happening. I'm not getting quite as good chord closure, so there is a little bit of like breathiness or huskiness coming in there, and it feels like this little push right from the onset. So it's not this kind of gliding that I was getting before. So I hope that when you're singing something and you go from the old way of doing things, whether or not that is not letting the belly come in, whether or not that is letting the rib cage collapse immediately, that when you do it this new way, you can hear more fullness in your voice. You feel like, some of my students say it's like coasting on top of water, like they have something underneath them. And that's why we use this idea of support. It's almost like this cushion underneath you. Something is keeping things afloat, or something is keeping things nice and even. So I hear more fullness or more resonance in my voice. Even though if I let everything collapse, sometimes I can get more volume. It is much more fatiguing for my vocal cords because I'm throwing this tornado at them and they're having to resist. They're having to work really hard to resist that. Whereas when I have an element of control, I'm still giving them air, then they are able to work much more efficiently. So if you've been losing your voice, if you feel like it's really inconsistent, if you get sore and tired, this is going to be really, really helpful for you. So the last thing that I'm going to say is that the belly responds in different ways. As I said, like, we don't have one set way of supporting. It changes constantly. We need to be flexible depending on what we're singing and how we want it to sound. So if I go into the higher part of shallow, which is high and strong, my belly is going to respond quite differently to that. And you can get a sense for that if you call something out. So I'm going to just do, hey! And I can feel my belly swinging a lot faster than when we were working with just releasing the air quite consistently. So if I'm singing something low or something quiet, I notice the belly moves in quite evenly, it's quite slowly. Whereas if I'm trying to sing something high or I'm trying to sing something strong, the belly swings in quite actively. And we don't want it to swing in and then go out again and then come in again. It's just going to keep moving in, and it will get to a point where it can't come in anymore, and then the rib cage is going to slowly kind of melt back down again. But I just wanted to show you the difference between the two. So tell me something, boy. So that is pretty slow. Tell me something, boy. Whereas if I do the higher one, I'm off the deep end, watch as I dive in. It swings in much faster. And so if that's not happening for you, this can mean that you're actually not giving it quite enough airflow to create the air pressure that we need to reach that note. And so I often get people to kind of cough or laugh to feel that flexibility. It's not a yanking, but it is responding to what you're wanting to do with that air. And as I said, the relationship between the air and the vocal cords and what we call subglottic pressure. So I hope that this helps you. Please let me know in the comments below how you experience it. Can you hear a difference when you do it the old way and then the new way? If you've got any questions, please let me know, because I always want to make sure that I'm explaining things in the most simple of ways so that you can make it happen. You're a human being. It's not all science that stays up here. It has to be experiential in your body. So I hope that this was helpful. Please leave a comment below. Share it with your singing friends if you think that it's valuable, and I will see you next time.